Before I begin, this story involves contemplating suicide and an unsuccessful attempt at it, so if you are sensitive to that kind of material, please skip over this story. Thank you. I was 15 years old at this time. I am now 16. I am a very experienced drug user. I have tested and tried multiple different things, especially psychedelics. L and D have done acid and shrooms a few times, and 2CB once with me. They're a little bit experienced, but they were not ready for what this night held for all of us. I am making this story of one of my most recent psychedelic experiences, an experience that changed who I am forever. This story is not to glorify the use of drugs, any type, but by my own experiences, it made me look at life much more positively. Also, I wanted to say, if you have ever contemplated any kind of suicide, talk to your family and friends that you trust. If you don't have that, I promise there is a way out of that thinking, and someone in this horrible, cruel world does care about you, like myself. I don't know who you are, but I do care about you. So let's get to this. It happened July 18th, 2021. Keep in mind, this is the same day my brother committed suicide just 2 years later. I wish I can go back in time and be more wise and take less drugs and figure out what went wrong. To this day, I really have no clue what did go wrong. It was supposed to be a fun and trippy night. For my friend, that I will call L for this story, there were many different factors to why this was a bad trip for him. For me too, technically. It was a horrible trip, but a learning experience nonetheless. I remember so many parts of this like it was yesterday. I get what is called flashbacks every other week. It is not excessive, but it is still there. To be 100% honest, this experience has never stopped me to use it again. I just want to see what happens, you know? So to the time we took these drugs, I had my two friends, L and D, come over, and I'm full on all kinds of drugs, LSD, shrooms, crystal molly, 2CB, and weed. We were smoking all day, and we had a plan to use the LSD, shrooms, and 2CB at a certain time. 10 p.m. hits. I take 10 tabs of LSD, a quarter of shrooms, and like 60 milligrams of 2CB with 0.4 grams of crystal molly. I let L and D only take like 3 tabs and a lot of shrooms and a bit of 2CB. We were just chilling for 20 minutes. Then, the shit started kicking in at 10:30 and I'm tripping balls. I'm looking at my boys like, yo, this is gonna be so much fun. Last thing I remember from 10 to 11 is I was looking at the hair on D's leg and it was squiggling and wiggling in all kinds of directions. I have no clue how to explain what I was looking at, but it was just so weird. After 11, apparently I disappeared for what seemed like forever, as they described it, and I never came back. L was looking for more shrooms, asking D, will he kill us? For some reason, L was so convinced that I was going to kill him because he took more without asking me, and he knew that all of everything there was all mine. All he brought was like 2 carts. So L was asking D if they should take more, and they did at some point, but L eventually started to have a panic attack because he was scared I was going to kill him for some reason. I'm still nowhere to be found this whole time. D, who was calm the entire trip, claimed he saw me just melt more and more into a couch the more he looked. Then eventually, I just disappeared. I'm nowhere to be found. I think at that time I was laying in my living room. They ate more shrooms. D told me months later that I was gone and that L was going crazy at the time and apparently said, I'm fucking done with this shit. And then he decided to run with the wind, as we both said apparently. A note on what L told me. While in the basement, he was convinced he was in a forest and saw animals running around him and just circling all over him. And the most notable thing D had saw, the calm one, said he went up the stairs from my basement slowly. Like he said it took him a minute to get up the stairs, and as he's going up the stairs, he feels like he's a lot higher than the staircase is. Then he goes to the door. I'm pretty sure he left it open. I'm not 100% sure. But he said he saw it closed, then it just swung open. And as soon as it did, he said he saw a black figure with its hands out meditating on the floor. And as soon as he saw that, he turned around and went back downstairs. He said the figure was also waving for him to go over there, but he did not listen to it. As far as I know, he could have saved the whole trip of ours because of that hallucination. I'm going to go back to L's experience. The moment he said he was done with this shit, he just ran as fast and as far as he could, up the stairs, then out of the front door. At that moment, I believe I was still laying on the floor. He kept running and running until people heard him screaming, "Sleep to stay alive!" Keep in mind, my house has cameras and a ring that goes off if any front or back door is opened when it should not be opened. For some reason, it did not decide to ring until it was too late and they could not find us unless we were screaming. D was chilling in the basement this whole time. He said he felt like he melted into the chair. Eventually, I wake up and I see the front door open and I get so confused. So then I decided to run too and try to find him before the alarm went off. I realized I would not be able to find him and I heard him screaming, "Sleep to stay alive!" So then I started screaming it as well. And eventually, I heard him stop, and as soon as that happened, my body fell and just gave up, it seemed like. Other people eventually heard us, a group of older teens who knew who we were. They said he tripped and just called 911 to try and help. They heard another voice, which was mine, so eventually they started looking for me. They saw me laying in the middle of the road, almost no clothes on, and my body was purple. Their first thought was, "He's dead." I do not know how to explain what happened to me, but let's start here. I'm reliving the greatest moments of my life, family there, best friends, my brother, all of them. In every memory, there's a door that gets brighter and brighter as I go through them, as if I'm going up, like I'm on the stairway to heaven. As I'm ascending, there's one more door that I need to go through. These gates, beautiful gates, gates of heaven, I believe. And I then see my body laying in the middle of the road, almost no clothes on, and body purple, like the girl who found me explained. I see myself, and I'm thinking, is this really going to be the end of my life? This is what happens when I die? Then I see a girl walk up to me, start shaking me, screaming, "Dami, Dami, don't die, please." Then I hear a voice, a loud whisper. As far as I know, it was the voice of God. It says, "Dominic, I have a question for you. Do you want to come here with us, or would you like to try again in this life?" I said, "Please let me stay here. I don't want to go back." I was begging. The voice said, "Dominic, you are not even close to done with what you are going to do. You're supposed to save, help, and change as many lives as you possibly can. You're not done, Dominic." I said, "Okay, I will try harder in this life." Then I woke up, and the girl was right there. She was talking to me, but I have no clue what she was saying. I just kept saying, "No, this is not real. I'm already dead. None of this is real. You are not real. Who are you?" She shook me again and pointed her finger like 2 houses down the road and said, "Now is this real? Does that look fake to you?" Down the road was multiple ambulances and cop cars surrounded their house, and all I hear is screaming and screaming. The girl took me back to my house and into my room, and I was alone there for a while. I'm just walking around in circles, looking at my pet bearded dragon. He looked so fucking interesting at the time. Then eventually, I just laid down on my bed and I woke up to, "Is that him?" And just to my wonder, both of my grandparents were standing in my room, asking me so many questions and looking at me. They turned on the light, and what was once my room turned into the most geometrical room in the world. I have no clue how to explain what my own room looked like. They are still asking me millions of questions, it seemed like, and I only heard one main question. What the fuck did they take? I could not talk. I was way too scared. Then they got closer to me, and they were staring at me, I think. They looked like horrific monsters, faces I could never explain. And as they were looking in my eyes, I hear one say, "Oh, Jesus Christ." The police eventually came to my house and went upstairs to get me, and they started asking thousands of questions. I yelled out, "It's all downstairs! Fuck you monsters! Get away from me!" So then they take me downstairs, and just to my belief, I see Dee, who looks dead, staring into the ceiling. I start to get confused. They also turned the lights on in the basement, and as soon as they did, Dee explained it hurt his eyes so horribly. And as we are down there, Elle is already in a stretcher being taken to the ER. As I see Dee in the chair, I walk up to him and say, "If this is the last time you ever see me, I love you, bro." Thank the Lord it was not the last time I saw both of them. Those are my childhood long best friends. Me and Dee are also eventually put on a stretcher. I was able to walk perfectly fine. I kept saying that. Same with Dee, he told me. But they told us both the same thing. This is how they all die. I remember being in the ambulance and they kept taking my pulse. I heard them say, "His pulse is going up and down very rapidly." Then, I'm still in the stretcher and they let me out of it and I'm put in an ER room next to Elle, who I saw. His body was like he was being exorcised. I'm never gonna forget that picture in my brain. I've seen things much worse, but that one hurts really badly. I remember being in the emergency room and they put a whole bunch of stickers and cords on me and it felt and looked like there were snakes biting all over my body. I look at the EKG monitor and my heartbeat went flat. I saw it go flat, but I was still alive. Then it just went back down over and over again. This whole time, my grandparents are in there with me, with a nurse and a cop watching. They finished the EKG scan quickly, and the cop that was just so fucking eager to ask me millions of questions did so when the nurse left. He was asking me, "Where is everything?" And I told him I did not know any better. I just kept talking and laughing hysterically at him, saying stuff like, "Do you really think you control people? Do you really even like your job? You're nothing but what many, many people hate in this world. You suck. I should really spit on your face." Of course, I would never do such a thing. I've been a good kid most of my life, no trouble with any feds, but I didn't know what I was saying. I just said it. If for some odd reason this officer is listening to this story, I truly do apologize for my actions and words towards you and your partners. I also heard Al was giving cops trouble. He was fighting with the cops in the ditch. I do not know anything about that, which is why I have not mentioned it. But back to me. I was in the room laying down, a shirt on my head, talking and talking, and for some reason, I thought it would be the funniest thing in the world if Elle had died. I was so convinced that the greatest moments of my life was actually his life. As I look back, I know they were mine, because first, why would I relive a whole other human being's life? And second, why would my family be in his? It did not make sense to me at the time. I just thought it was all his, and he was going to die. Longer into my stay at the ER and cops asking me questions, I started asking for a cup of water. Some old nurse had to get it, and it felt like forever when she finally came back with it. I was getting so irritated that I started yelling, "Where's my fucking water? I saw the fountain right there." I was so angry. I just wanted water. As soon as I drank the whole cup, I pissed like 2 gallons, and my grandparents said I pissed my pants multiple times. I felt very embarrassed. I remember seeing Elle's and Dee's parents in the hospital. I remember Dee left first, and I screamed to them, "I'm sorry this is all my fault. We just wanted to have fun." I remember they said, walking away, "It's okay, honey. It was all an accident." I was at the ER for maybe another 10 minutes and went back home. As I was going back home, I just remember everything still seeming so fake. I got home and went into my room. My grandparents checked up on me like every 30 minutes. It was all so fake. It felt as if I was a ghost being led back home. Now it's the 19th. Elle comes back over to apologize after all the things that had happened. I said there was no need to apologize. It was all my fault. We weren't ready. He was with his mom and 2 little brothers. I felt horrible for his family to see us the way they saw us that night and this morning. It's a really bad feeling. L said he stayed most of the night at the hospital with his mom until the trip died down. That's as far as the trip goes. It is July 19th now. I know I'm going to get arrested, so I did what any scared 15-year-old would do. I tried to kill myself at like 10 in the morning. I took 30 tabs of acid, I did 4 lines of the Molly, I ate an absurd amount of shrooms, smoked as much weed as I could, and ate the rest of the 2CB, which was maybe under 70 milligrams. It's obvious that I did not die. I do not remember anything that happened after that morning for 3 months. I remember the DEA coming to my house. I also think the FBI came to arrest me. Within a 3-month span, I do not remember what had happened. I got out of that daze like 3 months later. I was in a rehab facility that was horrible for me. I hated it. Today, after that experience, I learned a lot. Now, whenever I take anything at all, I'm afraid to do too much. I'm afraid I'll get kicked right back into that night. And from there, only God knows what would happen. Thank you for listening. I hope this helps you to second guess using a hallucinogenic drug. All these stories come from my Reddit community at reddit.com/r/tripreportstftt. If you want a chance to have your story read on this channel, please submit it there. And if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. It means a lot. Comment down below what you think of the video, or whatever may be on your mind. Thank you, and let's continue. So I am currently 17, and this trip happened in late 2020 when I was 15. It was on a Friday, and I was just chilling in my room, bored as hell. Then suddenly, my friend, let's just call him Chris, tells me that he and his friend Christian got some tabs, and they wanted me to come over and trip with them. I said fuck it, hell yeah, I'll be over there soon. I was actually quite excited to do it because I never took it before, and I did do research on it even before this, and it seemed like a fun and relatively harmless drug. So I get over there about 20 minutes later, and they're chilling in my friend's room, and they ask me if I'm ready for this. And of course, I was. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Chris took 2.5 tabs. Keep in mind, this was Chris's first time taking acid, while Christian took 2, and I took half a tab, just because it was my first time, and these were strong paper tabs. About 30 minutes pass by, and we're all just listening to music and setting the vibe for the trip. Then about 20 minutes later, my friend Chris says that he's starting to feel it, and that he's already tripping. He then suddenly starts to freak out, and started screaming at me and Christian, telling us that we need to go to sleep. He goes to his bed and shuts off the lights. This really killed my mood, because seeing him freak out just made me anxious and worried. Also, keep in mind that I'm still not tripping yet, and I was still waiting to feel something. Then about a minute later, my friend starts screaming at us that we need to leave and get out of there. We try to calm him down, but he was too out of it. His dad then walks in the door with Taco Bell and is confused about what the fuck is going on. My friend Chris is laying down on the floor, still screaming, and he didn't even recognize his dad or any of us. His dad tells us that we need to leave, and me and Christian go outside while I wait for my ride. But then, however, Christian starts to freak out too, and he said that he doesn't even feel human, and he kept saying that same thing, repeating it over and over. About 10 minutes later, Christian's ride came, and then my ride came shortly after. When I got in the car, that's when I really started feeling it. The street lights and car lights look very bright, like a flashlight just shining in your eye, and I noticed things were moving and swaying a little bit, but I tried my best to keep my cool and just relax. When I got home, everything looked alien to me, and everything looked melty and swirly, and I was seeing tracers whenever I saw my hand or anything move. I immediately go to my room. I did not want my parents finding out I took acid. When I got into my room, it didn't even feel like I was in my room at all. My walls looked like they were pure white and were swirly. It felt like I was in a completely different dimension. I felt intense anxiety, and I could barely feel my body, and it felt like I was detached from my body. At this point, I was having a bad trip, so I decided to just try and sleep it off, which was a huge mistake. I then put on YouTube, and then got into my bed and tried to sleep. When I'd closed my eyes, I was trying to listen to what the video was saying, but it all sounded like gibberish, and I couldn't make out a single word that they were saying in the video. This really freaked me out, because I felt like an alien trying to comprehend the English language, but couldn't understand anything. I was starting to forget who I was completely, and I'm pretty sure I had full ego death. I even forgot that I took acid in the first place. I got out of bed, and I went into the kitchen to get water, and the taste was kind of off. I don't really know how to explain it, but it just tasted weird. I go back into my room, and about 10 minutes later, I get up and go back into the kitchen, and I repeated this process many times, and it felt like I was in an endless loop, stuck in my consciousness. I figured it's not a great idea to sleep, and I tried to listen to music to calm me down, but I couldn't understand or feel the music, and I was getting very frustrated. I then tried to play GTA 5, and I only played for like 20 minutes because I could barely understand what I was doing, because everything was very distorted. I then go out into the living room for like the 100th time, and my dad tried talking to me, and he looked very distorted, and I could barely recognize that it was even him. His face and body was melting like crazy, and was shrinking and then getting bigger, and I could barely understand what the hell he was saying. I just proceeded to nod my head at him, and then my mom asked me if I was okay. I told her that I was fine, and that I was just tired. I'm surprised I even got that sentence out clearly, because of how fucked up I was. I went back to my room, and I remember I tried to watch regular show, but of course, I could barely make sense of what was happening and what they were saying. A very interesting thing to mention is that whenever I was in my room during this trip, it felt like I was in a box, floating through the endless universe. And when I went out of my room, it felt like I was leaving that dimension and jumping to another one. That's the best way I can explain it. This trip felt like an eternity, and I felt like I was going to be stuck in this endless loop forever, and that there is nobody that could help me. Nothing felt real. Everything felt fake and dreamlike. After 5 or 6 hours of this hellish trip, I started to come down and started to remember who I was, and that the whole reason I was experiencing this is because I took acid. I felt a lot of relief and actually enjoyed the rest of the trip, and I kind of felt disappointed and sad because I didn't enjoy the trip, but nonetheless, I was glad I was out of that bad trip. I think the whole reason that I had a bad trip in the first place is because I saw my friends Chris and Christian freak out, so that killed my vibe from the beginning and caused me to have a bad trip. I checked up on my friends the next day, and they said that they were okay, they were just tripping hard as fuck. I was glad they were okay, and I honestly could not imagine what they were experiencing and how badly they were tripping, considering they took a much higher dose than I did. I actually did take acid again after that, a month later, and had an amazing euphoric trip, and my last acid trip was in July 2021. If you are planning to take acid by yourself or with a friend or some friends, please make sure you have a good set and setting and the right mindset, and make sure you are comfortable. Please be safe with it, and don't underestimate the tabs you are taking, like my friends did. Last week, I took 3 350 UG gel tabs, and that will be the last time I ever do such a high dose of acid. So I was planning on taking a tab with one of my friends at my place since my family was going to be out of town, but my friends had plans early in the morning and didn't want to be up all night. My dumbass thought I could handle 3 tabs on my own, so that's what I did. And at first, when it started to kick in, I already started to feel light and started to laugh at everything until it really kicked in. Like 30 to 40 minutes in, I'd started to feel a bit weird, like something was wrong, and I started to get worried because I got in a loop of getting up and sitting down over and over again, and I couldn't control myself, and I felt like I was going to be stuck like that forever. It felt as if time was going slow, yet I was going fast. I don't know how to explain it, but after that terrible loop, there was a loud frequency that was just getting louder and louder in my head. While this was happening, I start to see eyes opening on the walls and the TV from what I was watching. The walls started to get white, and my vision seemed like it was flashing with light. The frequency in my head was very high, and there was laughing coming from the upstairs neighbor, which wasn't helping me at all. At this point, I'm going insane and just wanted all to stop, but my senses were overloading and started seeing fractals and geometric patterns everywhere. And even when I looked at my hand, it looked like it was blending into the ground, and I started to notice there were faces everywhere, like the cover of Tool's 10,000 Days album. Then I remember closing my eyes because I was fucking terrified with everything that was happening, and I started crying and seizuring. I then started to have an out-of-body experience where I saw myself going insane, then came back and started to almost rip off my hair until I saw myself again. And while I was zooming out of myself, I saw other people's apartments in their rooms, doing their own things, minding their own business. My vision then goes back to me, and the frequency goes away, and I start fucking crying, as I keep hearing the laughter from my neighbor, which reminded me of my family, which made me cry even more, and was just grateful for where I was and the things I've got in my life right now. After this, I go to my room because I don't want to look at the TV because the people seemed like they were talking to me, which made me very uncomfortable. Same with the face visuals and the fractals that were everywhere. In my room, I just laid down and listened to Anima by Tool, the whole album, in the dark. And during that, I was hearing literally everybody in the world speaking different languages, going on about their day, and I was seeing this bright blue light. It looked like fire, and it felt so beautiful and peaceful in that moment, listening to the wind and everybody. When the album finished off with the last song, I felt so understanding of everything that happens in the world. Later, I finally got out of my room and went to see my sister's succulent plants. And when I saw them, they looked as if they were breathing, reacting to my touch and to what I was saying, and felt such a strong bond with those plants because they were the only living things with me. In the end, the whole trip ended being peaceful and fun. The few days after the trip, I was still able to see the faces, but just not as noticeable though. I don't regret having that ego death, but it did show me some stuff that nobody needs to see unless they are fucking ready or experienced like I am with acid. Anyways, I'll just end it here. Be safe with psychs, please, and don't overdo it. And if anybody has seen face visuals too, let me know. I wonder if anybody else saw what I saw. My two friends, Harry and Mason, wanted to do a group trip together since Harry had never tripped before. This is all during the senior year of high school. We decided to meet at Mason's house in the morning and drop there. I took 3 200 UG tabs, Harry took 1, and Mason took 2. Drop time was 12:45 p.m. Mine kicked in the fastest, and I'm getting to the point where I'm tripping the most I've ever done in my life. I had to sit down on the beanbag to catch my breath. Mason's girlfriend comes to pick us up to drive us to skate. We all 3 hop in the car and drive to the park with a lot of tall parking garages. The whole time, I'm having a blast because she's blasting music so loud that every nerve in my body feels like heaven. We get to the parking garage, and I have to sit down on my skateboard because the bad thoughts started creeping in. I started thinking how I'm going to be so high for 14 hours and I have to go home at 11:30 p.m. But then Harry told me that it just hit him and he's tripping balls and that it's so different than what he imagined. In that moment, all my bad thoughts went away because now I felt someone in my wavelength and I was like, hell yeah, this is about to be some fun. By 3 p.m., Mason's girlfriend dropped us off at his house because she had a soccer game. Then Mason's friend Luke called him. This kid is a crazy motherfucker, and he pulls up to the house, demanding that we go on a hike up the mountain. We all agree and decide to drive to Dollar Tree to buy hats. Luke has taken the role of our park ranger trip guide as he wears a safari hat. Harry is wearing a dinosaur head hat, and I wore a plastic wizard hat. By this point, everything seemed like a fever dream because it was just so surreal seeing kids pay with the hats on. Also, money on acid seemed pointless as fuck, and I had a very hard time paying. We get out of the store and drive out to the mountain looking for a trail. We blast music on his bass-boosted speakers until we found a small hidden trail beside the road. We park the car and start up the journey. Harry brought his brother's weed from California so that we could smoke. We stopped like 10 minutes in to pack so many bowls, and believe me when I say that I was a virgin to smoking actual good weed before this, but for some reason, I wanted to get higher. After all of us at least smoked one bowl, we go up the mountain and we make it like another 20 minutes before stopping to smoke again. This time, Luke and Mason had 2 bowls, and I'm pretty sure I was so high that I was just burning the weed without inhaling. Sundown was starting to happen, and we decided to start heading down to the car before it gets dark. But Mason wanted to stay and smoke more bowls. No one could convince him otherwise, and we start getting mad, so Luke and Harry decide to start walking back. I didn't want to leave Mason because he reverted to a childlike state where he was too high and too deep into the trip. For me, it felt that if I left, he would be lost in the woods and become one with the woods. That's how bad I was tripping. He smoked 2 more bowls, and after that, he got up and started running like a maniac down the mountain. I couldn't run that fast because I was very disoriented, and I was quickly left behind. By this point, my vision was warped. Everything was like a fractal merging into itself. The path was bleeding with the trees, because all you could see is an endless land of trees. I started getting paranoid since I couldn't hear my friends anymore, and I started running. The faster I ran, the faster it felt like something was coming at me. After going insane for a bit, my friends finally let me catch up, and now it's almost dark, but we make it to the bottom of the mountain and to our car. But that's not where the story ends, because when we got to the car, we found out that Mason had dropped his phone somewhere on the trail. All 4 of us very sober people decided to go back up the trail again with our phone flashlights. Right now, it is pitch black, with the only light source being our phone lights lighting our feet and the fallen leaves. I knew from the get-go that it would have been impossible to find his phone, but nevertheless, we still searched desperately for the spots we stopped to smoke at. By this point, everything started to feel surreal, because it seemed that all that existed in the world was a small trail, and Harry and Mason started bantering, and it further made it into a movie. As Luke kept his park ranger persona going on Snapchat on 1%, taking videos saying, "We trippin' in the woods." But after a while, we gave up and decided to head back down. Bad thing is that no one knows or trusts how to get back down, so we draw sticks to determine who will lead us down the mountain. I chose the short stick, so here I am, 3 tabs in, and baked as hell, trying with all my brain power to pay attention to the trail and not get lost. Maybe 10 minutes have passed, and I started panicking because I convinced myself that I went off the trail because I felt logs underneath my feet. I have completely convinced myself that I had lost the trail and ultimately have killed my friends because we were alone on a mountain. So I had a dilemma. Should I tell my friends that I have no clue where I'm going, or should I just keep walking and accept my death as I walked into the unknown? On that day, I was ready to die, and I accepted death. It turns out I was on the trail the whole time, and I was just tripping balls. After we got to the car, we stared at the constellations and the curvature of the earth, and ended with Taco Bell and a skate sesh. Good times.